You know, it's so hard to believe that already we're in the month of February. I mean, wow, January was crazy for me. I actually had, not thinking, but I had so many flights. We packed over 1,000 cases in the month of January, 800 just at Lynn University, by the way. All my fighting nights down there. I want to say thank you so much for once again for the 6 year in a row, packing over, 800 cases, and distributing them to kids out in Florida. You know, the thing is that I want each and every one of us to know that we have an opportunity to step up, use our voices, and make change. I hope that most of you have watched the previous podcast that I did in reference to this amazing book and about this sweet young little girl, Harmony. I was very fortunate enough to actually become friends with Blair and Jonathan, and they absolutely, as I watched their family, and by the way, when we watch people through social media, I want us all to remember that there's a lot more that goes on in the background. But, as I've been able to get to know Blair and Jonathan, they're very much like Reese and I, raising our kids, trying to make sure we do the best for them, but also trying to juggle what we know is a shattered foster care system. So when, I heard about Harmony's story, and that this book was coming out, immediately I had David, my producer, reach out and say, please, I want you to be on Fostering Change. I keep telling everybody that this is my last season. It's season number 6. And when I have guests that are going to be my guests that are getting ready to come on, it really pushes me to do another season. And the reason why is because we need to educate us all. Every single one of us must be educated about our foster care system. Every single one of us have an opportunity to help change our foster care system. And every single one of us must understand that children who are in foster care, they do not belong to you. They do not belong to me. They belong to us. They belong to us. And they are our future of tomorrow. And for us as a society, we must take the blame that we failed this little girl. So, my next guest, without any further, I'd like to welcome Blair and Jonathan Miller to Fostering Change.
Well, thank you so much for having us. Appreciate all the work you do, and I feel like we know you so well and everything we've connected over the years, and thanks for everything you do.
Well, you know what? The fact is that I absolutely admire both of you. And, you having 3 boys and me, I understand it with 4 boys, and raising 5 kids, my husband and I. And we are so connected in so many ways. And so, as much as I love to sit here and talk about, what we've all done, I really want to talk about Harmony. I want people to say her name. I think it's important that when anything happens like this, we have got to not forget to say their names, because I think by not saying their names, we're not putting a face to them. So here's this little girl, Harmony, who comes into a shattered foster care system. Tell me exactly how it all started for her.
Well, as so much of what we hear is the tragedy of her story, and she was in a situation where she was in and out of foster care, just like our son, our youngest son, Jamison was, and them being siblings, they were in foster homes together. They would go into a foster home, try to be reunited, go back into a foster home, and there were constant issues, constant traumas for both of them. And it got to a point where they were trying to figure out, the legal system was trying to figure out what to do with both of them. Harmony got reunited with her biological dad, who's different than Jamison's biological dad. And Harmony went that way. And then soon after, Jamison was up for adoption, and we knew he was going to go down that path. So that's the simplistic way of what happened. And once we got involved, one of our first questions, once we knew that Jamison was going to join our family, our first questions was, well, what's the situation with Harmony? Because we knew instantly they had a close bond.
So, Jonathan, where was the birth mother?
So she was in and out of their life. She would come to some foster care visits. And, this was like very so real. And someone that doesn't understand foster care, or it's not in the trenches in this, they don't really understand. It's a sterile room. It was basically a closet with a ripped up couch. And this is where she would come and visit her children. Sometimes she was there. Sometimes she was on time. Sometimes she was hours late. And then sometimes she just wasn't there at all because of the battle she was overcoming. She also grew up in foster care with her five siblings. They were all in foster care. They were all separated. So this path, it just continued. And the day we adopted Jamison or started fostering to adopt him, the social worker said, "We are shocked that the judge gave custody to the birth father, someone that knew Harmony less than 40 hours. He had spent less than 40 hours with her. He had just been out of jail for attempted murder. He got off on a technicality. And they said that the judge gave custody because of the caseload. And the lawyers had all agreed that this was in Harmony's best interest to go with a possible convicted murderer, a career criminal, to send a child that has special needs back into that home, to rip her and Jamison apart. They were sometimes in foster care together. They went to a lot of respite care because the foster parents didn't always keep them. And so then they would go from one home to the next, to the next. And Rob, one thing I think about the day we picked up Jamison, it was a grocery bag, actually. That was everything, and broken trains. I have a picture. It's two bags, and one was like a ripped up Disney bag, and his toys were just really torn apart. But in there was an Elmo doll, and a Mickey Mouse, and that was very special. And so when we first met Jameson, he actually told us his name was Mickey Mouse, not Jameson, because even at that age, he was protecting what he knew because he felt so vulnerable. So when it came for his birthday, he asked for his birthday to get his sister a new Elmo doll. And sadly, he never got that opportunity to give it to her because we failed Harmony. Everyone failed her. She was a number. She did not matter.
And that's what I see so often, as I travel the country and I, go and meet children and hear these stories. These kids have turned into numbers. That is all they have become, disposable children. And I see more and more states are so dead set on reunification, no matter how bad that reunification is. And then what happens is we see kids like Harmony who become what we call the boomerang kids, the kids who are in and out of the system and the trauma that they continue to keep pinging, continue to keep building. We failed this little girl, and to hear that a judge, and by the way, it wasn't only the judge. It was the
Of
social
course.
worker. It
Yep.
was the guardian of litem. It was every single person that had anything to do when they touched Harmony's file, because all she
Mhm.
was a file, to allow her to go to a convicted. Let me tell you, as a dad of five who, when our children came to us, same situation, half the time the birth parents didn't show for visits. The room was, we finally went to the judge and petitioned the judge to allow us to be the supervisor of the visits so we could move the visits to more of a place that was more fun. So we would do the park or we would do Chuck E. Cheese's. But then again, they wouldn't show. You
Yeah.
know, again, they wouldn't show. And the thing that people need to understand, and Blair, I'd like for you to chime in on this, is the thing is that we're always going to have foster care. Okay. The thing is that we know that it's shattered, but if there was something that we could do differently immediately, what do you see that? I mean, you as a news anchor person, you hear a lot of these stories and so see a lot of these stories. What do you see that we as a society could do better?
We only hear about the foster system when there's a tragedy. We only hear about the foster system when a child dies. We only hear about the foster system when we know that the system is broken and gives no hope to people. There's so much that needs to be done. And so much that starts with compassion and making sure that we're putting kids in homes where they belong, whether it's with adopted families like us or reunification. Just because you're being reunited with a biological parent doesn't make it okay. What's being done to make sure that these children are going to doctor's visits, that they're going to school, that they're being fed, that they have clothes? You know what it's like when you're going through the adoption process. We know what it's like when you're going through the adoption process. They're asking us everything about, who we hung out with when we were in fifth grade.
Yes.
The background is extensive. There's nothing that we keep from when you're going through that process, and we welcome that. That's what it should be. I'm glad the process with each one of our boys was very thorough. I'm so thankful for that. When we moved to DC from Boston after we adopted Jamison, we had a social worker come down from Boston into our house, spend the day with us just to make sure Jamison was getting what he needed, that he was in a healthy environment, that he was going to school, he was going to the doctor. That didn't happen in Harmony, but how many more kids is that happening to? Where the system is not going to make sure that kids are in the best interest of what they need. So I think it's pretty simple. I think it's pretty basic. The fact that this has not changed in so much time, in so many cases, not just Harmonies, but so many more. There are countless. What has been done to change it? Nothing. And it blows my mind every time we sit down and talk about it.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, I think about the fact we've never had a first lady who has ever taken up a platform of foster care. Okay, never. And we have no one who was out there giving a voice except for when a child dies. And then all of a sudden, everybody points fingers and everybody, wants to step back and say, well, I didn't. When the fact is that we all need to step forward and say, we did. We actually failed Harmony. What made you guys decide that you wanted to put this in writing?
I think,
Because
well, go ahead,
okay.
John.
I think for us, because Harmony's story needs to be out there. What happened to Harmony, everyone needs to know. And it needs to know because we need to educate people. It's not nearly as beautiful as people think when you think of adoption and foster care. The difference that was given to Jamison between Harmony, again, Harmony was just a number, and it takes a village to raise these children. Like Blair said, we had a social worker, a lawyer, fly down to Virginia to make sure Jamison was safe. If one person would have treated Harmony the same way, she would maybe still be here today. It was a systematic failure. The social worker in New Hampshire didn't care enough about Harmony that he didn't even get out of his vehicle to make sure she was safe after it was a report that she was being punched in the face. He looked at her from the car and said, she looks okay. I see her walking with her dad. Like, that's inhumane. We treat animals in an animal shelter so much better than that. Think about what you have to do to get your dog back if animal control picks them up. None of that happened for Harmony. She was a number, she was a caseload, and this is mind-blowing. This seems such like an easy fix to me that we say, first of all, where's the ICPC laws? They should transfer from state to state to state, just like we all had to do when we adopted our children, right? And then siblings matter. Siblings bond matter. These two, Harmony was basically Jamison's caregiver, even though was blind in one eye. She had a disability. They were both born addicted to opioids or meth. And you know what? Nothing was done when she was handed back over to that monster. There was no follow-up to see if she was getting medical care. There was no follow-up to see if she was in school. So Blair and I think, let's start at Massachusetts. This is an easy change. Of course, people want to help children, right? The pushback we've got in saying this is political, this is making DCF and children's and families, it's putting their privacy in the public, and they're not comfortable with that. And why aren't they comfortable with it is the question.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now because it's an industry that makes money on the backs of children. And that's all it is an industry that makes money on the backs of children. Every
You're right.
attorney that walks into that courtroom, and by the way, let me tell you something. When the judge awarded our children to us and we had to go to trial, because we were gay men, we didn't get the free adoption. We actually had to actually hire an attorney to go to our adoption. But when not one birth parent showed up for the trial continued on. And then the attorneys of the birth parents who are given to them then filed appeals. Appeal number one, appeal number two. Again, nobody showed up but just us. And so it's an industry that makes money on the backs of children. And that's why Harmony was just a number. And that's why the state does not want you to pull the onion back. Because when you start pulling it back, you see the continuing fail after fail after fail. The fact is that the author actually told me that you all are actually donating the funds to this, which is absolutely absolutely amazing. There's nothing better than good humans who give back. And so everybody, every time you purchase this book is, and by the way, take it from somebody. I've told you this. I've written children's books. Written. We don't make a ton of money on books. Okay. So, but everything that when you buy this book, it's actually going to be donated. You guys decided to donate to
The
the
Dave Thomas Foundation.
Dave, okay, so let
Yeah,
me tell you something. Love Dave Thomas
yeah,
Foundation. Rita is one of my very dear
great.
friends. She's been my co-host on the my podcast. I have her on speed dial, and I love the fact because I actually was just talking to Rita not long ago. And you guys are amazing that you're doing that because Dave
Well,
is amazing.
I'm on the board for the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption, and when we were talking with Carol about this book, one of the first things we said to her was, what the public perception of this. We don't. This is not about us. It's not about us making money. We don't want it to be perceived as trying to get on the New York Times bestseller list. That's not what it's about at all. But there's going to be. We realize people are going to buy this. What's going to happen then? And she said the same thing. Let's find an organization that do that and that can benefit from that. It made sense for a number of reasons. As you know, the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption is incredible, and love the work that we're doing there, and it just seems like a perfect fit. So when I got a chance to tell Rita, this is what I think we're going to do. Of course, as you know, she's amazing, and was very excited about that.
Yeah, she is a great human, as I
Yeah.
said, and I'm very lucky that I get to call her my friend. The fact is that as Jamison grows, how are you all? And I actually read and well, the letter that he wanted the judge to hear about his sister, it made me cry again this morning. But I know that you two are the type of people that you continue to talk about Harmony. You continue to give her a voice. How is Jameson doing?
I think most days he's a typical 8-year old. He's learning to ride his bike and scooter, but every now and then he'll look at you and say, "Why did she have to die? Why did someone hurt her? I have her glasses." And he holds on to glasses that are a replica of hers that someone sent him. And if he's having a bad day or if he's sad or at night, sometimes I'll go in his room and they're just held in his hand. Um, and we tell him what he can comprehend. But we get very worried about one day where he goes, "Why was she not protected and I was?"
Yeah,
Like why did that happen?
yeah.
Before we knew everything, I can remember a doorbell ringing, and one of our older boys, Zeker Cash, said, "It's a kid at the door." And he goes, "Maybe she found me." And he ran to the door looking for his sister, but she had been beat to death because no one protected her.
No one protected her. No one protected her. The
Well,
fact is you talk about, the siblings that are separated, I'm the youngest of 10 who grew up in the system. We were all separated. And I remember when my daughter and my son, they first arrived, they were 2 and 4, and my son has fetal alcohol syndrome. And I remember the social worker literally looked at Reese and I and said to us, are you sure you want this one? We can just leave you with his sister, and we can find another placement for him because he's never going to talk or never going to walk.
Mm.
It was like this kid didn't even matter. It was like, what do you mean you're going to separate him from his sister that he's been with, since he was born? He's 2 years old, she's 4, and immediately in her mind, it was just like, well, maybe we didn't want to handle a child with a disability. And by the way, my son
Mm.
Makai, he runs, he talks, he walks, he loves. He's the president of his SGA. And by the way, now he drives and drives me crazy. Um,
that's awesome.
so the fact is kids are resilient, and Jameson's resilient and your other boys. And I think a lot of it has to do with the nurturing and the love that we as parents give. And I think that that is so important because not all foster parents are bad. I want people to understand that. Not all foster homes are dangerous. But the fact is that we have to do a better job at really looking at where we're placing these kids, even if you're placing them back with biological family members. And I think that that is the fail for us as a nation is that we think just because blood runs within these kids and with these bio parents, that immediately they're going to take them back and they're going to open their arms, they're going to love. But here's a prime example where her biological father did nothing but kill her, Listen, everybody, the book is called A Cruel Injustice. Yeah, this is a must read, a must read. And let me tell you something. Once you read it, buy a second copy and give it to someone else. Because the only way that we as a nation are going to see change within our foster care system is if we educate ourselves about kids like Harmony. Because I'm telling you, in this country, Harmony is just, this isn't just a one up. It's happening everywhere, not just in this state, but throughout our country. Guys, I have to tell you, I can't thank you enough. I feel
Thank
like
you.
we're family.
We
I,
are.
Reese sends his love, and I can't wait for us to get together. And I love seeing the boys growing. And the fact is that this book will sit on my shelf, and I will always remember Harmony. And thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you, Rob. I
Thanks.
mean, you're amazing. We're so appreciative of what you do and the spotlight you bring to things like this, but so many other avenues. And we're so thankful, so grateful, and appreciate your friendship and love.
Rob, is what I say to so often people is, and especially you for doing this, is Harmony didn't have a voice for several years, and thank you for being a part of her voice. It really matters. And one day we want to show Jamison when he asks the hard questions, is people like this, they really cared about your sister.
And we did love her. And I say to people all the time, and remember this as you're watching this, you do not have to know someone to love someone. You truly don't have to know someone to love someone. And these children, over 400,000 kids in the United States, they deserve our love. So until next time, this is another episode of Fostering Change. Continue to go out there and be a good human. Take care.